Hello and welcome to For the Region's Creative Sector Forum. We're really delighted to bring together members, colleagues and partners from across South West Wales to have another look at the creative sector in our region and consider the opportunities for the sector, for careers for people across South West Wales, hear from some of the businesses and organisations that are doing exciting things in the creative industries right here on our doorstep, and share reflections and insights on the future of the sector and what the opportunities are, particularly what can we do collaboratively to promote creative employment, creative opportunities across the region, and really just to hear the insights and reflections of all of you that are working in the sector or supporting people who do work in this sector, and see what the future holds. So most of you know me, I'm Dawn Lyle, one of the founders of For the Region, and I'm joined by my colleague Zoe Antrobus, and we've got our great colleague Evie taking notes and recording the actions that emerge and any ideas and projects that need to be taken forward from discussion. We'll look forward to hearing from all of you as we go on. What we wanted to do to begin with is enable a little bit of introduction and discussion, and we've got speakers lined up to prompt some of that conversation and share reflections from different parts of the creative sector. So we'll be talking from the perspective of radio, of TV, of design and web, and creative industries in Eregin with S4C in Carmarthenshire as well. So we've got quite a diverse number of topics and aspects of the sector to discuss. But before we do that, we're going to invite you guys to break out into small groups and introduce yourselves to each other. And what we'd love you to think about in those little breakout rooms, which will only last for 10 minutes, is just bring to the table one reflection or idea or priority that's on your mind at the moment as an opportunity area for the creative sector. We'd love to just collate some thoughts and ideas. What's on your mind as we come to the end of the summer, to the beginning of a new academic year, and looking forward to what's going to be a very busy autumn for all of us, no doubt. What's on your mind? What are the issues? What would you like to reflect on or bring to the table for discussion? So take a minute to introduce yourselves in your breakout groups, quick hello, and if everyone can just take a minute to share a reflection, 10 minutes should be all you need, and then you can come back in and we'll regroup. Okay, welcome back, folks. Welcome back into the main room. I hope you had time for brief intros and a bit of discussion in your groups, and I'd love to hear some of what was shared in those discussions. So open mic, if anyone would like to give me a wave or raise your hands, what came out of that discussion, or share any reflections. How are people feeling about the creative sector? What's on people's minds? Who would like to share any thoughts?
Hello everyone. Particularly I want to wave to my man James sitting over there across from me. Great to see you. I think some interesting things that I already said in that group, but maybe they're good to share as a whole, is that in times of stress like looming recessions, creative industries have a habit of getting sidelined. People worry about spending and investing in particular on things like innovation and that sort of thing. So as an industry, we need to respond by promoting the fact that the creative industries are where you need to spend your money all the time, but in particular when there's things like recessions, in order to ensure that you are prepared for the good times with fresh new thinking and good ideas.
Obviously, I don't work directly within the creative industry, but I think our group was particularly talking about struggling recruitment. Recruiting the right staff, and especially within the creative industry, where obviously with the pandemic and everything like that. So I think I'm speaking on behalf of everyone. And the gentleman from the Elysium was saying they've opened a gallery in the Mumbles, but it was recruitment, I think, was the main one, unless anyone of my group want to chip in.
Yeah, skills and recruitment, massive ongoing conversation to have, especially for this sector. But I think every sector at the moment has its challenges, doesn't it? So hopefully we'll be able to unpack some of that and see what the issues are and how we can collaborate to sort of unlock those opportunities that exist in the creative industries for people across the region. Zoe.
My one, I guess, fits into recruitment is that young people, I guess, don't understand the opportunities here in the creative industry in South West Wales. And I think maybe there needs to a bigger sort of marketing or promotional job to do so that young people understand the wide range of opportunities that are here right in South West Wales across the 4 counties, and especially those ones that don't fit into academia, the ones that sort of get missed. Usually they are the creative ones. That's probably why they don't fit into academia. We need to like sweep them up a little bit and encourage them and show them what's here on our doorstep.
Our group sort of were chatting around how difficult it is, I suppose, as either a one-man band or a freelancer to find the time, isn't it, to sort of either educate yourself as a creative, or to be able to sort of take on an apprentice, or that you can then help train up. But you kind of know that you need maybe additional resource sometimes, but finding that is quite difficult when you're sort of being everything within your business. So, and that goes for not just sort of freelancers or one-man band, it also goes for the SMEs, because, you know, to try and find the time to bring somebody new on board, you know, is the time, isn't it? And it's the effort that needs to go into it. And it's kind of a bit of a catch-22 situation. So is there anything that can be done about that to make that easier? I'm not sure, but it was sort of a theme that we were chatting through in our group.
And it's true, isn't it, that in the creative sector, there are a huge number of really micro enterprises, you know, one-man bands, one-woman bands, freelancers, and very small teams. So, yeah, sharing insight and resources on sort of how small companies grow into bigger ones and how tiny enterprises tackle some of these issues. This is really interesting to discuss. Thanks, Rachel.
I was trying to see if anybody else from our group was going to join in, but I'll try and summarise what we discussed then. And that was very much because I think people were discussing how do you get to be seen in this region as well, and what networks are available out there already for us to develop our artistry and our creative practice, but also in terms of getting to know the area and who else is out there, because it is having to look at different ways and structures of doing that and having support rather than those that already exist within cities.
Yeah, really interesting topic, isn't it, about the networks and how we collaborate and how we work together with others in the region with complementary skill sets, and yeah, building on each other's strengths, knowing who's out there. Really interesting. Thanks, Caris. I'd like to introduce Helen Bowden first of all. Now, some of you may know that Helen was actually one of the co-founders of For the Region when we started nearly 5 years ago, and then she went off to pursue an opportunity to be a content editor at the BBC, so we couldn't really hold that against her, and no hard feelings there, but she's been a fantastic supporter of For the Region right from the very start, and continues to work with us on a number of things. So I'm delighted to introduce Helen Bowden, whose main background and experience is in the radio sector, former chief exec at The Wave. And yeah, Helen, thanks for joining. Talk to us. What do you think are the issues, the exciting possibilities for the sector, and tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
Thank you. Thanks, Dawn. Yeah, hi everybody. So yeah, as Dawn said, I've been in Swansea for 12 years. I came as managing director of the Wave and Swansea Sound, where I was for 7 years. Prior to that, I was a radio presenter and worked my way up to senior management. There are times that I've wished I stayed as a presenter, but that's another story. Then I worked with Swansea Bay Futures, which became For the Region, and then I went to work for the BBC Wales, Radio Wales for 2 years, where I was deputy editor. Just to grow my, carry on with my broadcasting skills and use that knowledge in lots of different things. But then when COVID came, and I said this earlier, I think that was a massive turning point for so many people, where it made us all reflect on where we were within our careers and what we wanted to do. And for me, it was, what are the things I really love doing? I love talking. I love doing voiceover. I do a lot of e-learning voiceover for companies, a lot of corporate work. So I love that. I love being creative. So I love making video, creating video. And that's sidelined with a bit of marketing, because obviously my background from radio, it has got some marketing in it, although I don't ever proclaim to be a top bod in marketing at all. But it's all really about talking about business. And I think, for me, having worked now with For the Region, and we're working in particular with Neath Port Talbot Council at the moment on a project there in the manufacturing and IT industry, it's about getting them to think about being a little bit more creative with what they do, and how can we get the message of your business out there. And when we think about creative, we think about, we might think about video, we might think about radio advertising, newspaper advertising, social media, all of that goes hand in hand. And I actually read something quite interesting, that in 2020, 96% of consumers increased online video consumption. 9 out of 10 viewers said they wanted to see more videos from brands and businesses. And apparently this year, and the average person is predicted to spend 100 minutes per day watching online video, which is massive. So that says that as businesses, people should be thinking more creatively and thinking about how they get the message of their business out there, and who is consuming that, who will consume that, and how do you do it? And I think we're working certainly with Neath Port Talbot and with For the Region to try and get that message out there a little bit more, that podcasting, short videos, explainer videos, 30-second videos for your business are absolutely the way to go on social media. And I'm sure Tony will talk about some of this, because he's got a background in digital as well, and the social media marketing side. So I think that's a challenge. And I think when we're talking about, as Lee pointed out earlier, the climate emergency, the recession, it is about how we find solutions. And is it that businesses put on the back burner investing any time in creativity or training, for that matter, because times are tough? So where do you put your efforts and your money and your budgets? Do you put it into the creative sector? Do you push your business forward that way, or do you take a step back and say, I'm not spending my time or money on it? And I think that's another issue for a lot of businesses, is that they do tend to prioritize, I guess, what is important for their business. And I think we're lucky in South West Wales. We have a huge amount of universities, colleges, young people who are working in the creative industry. And I know Dawn and Zoe, we did lots of work with Trinity St David with their arts centre there. We worked with them. We worked with the Swansea Bay, with the business school at the Swansea Bay campus. We did some work there. And I think there are lots of opportunities to draw people in to help us be more creative with our business and develop those skills that those people have. So it's something I'm quite passionate about. I did talk in our little breakout session, a bit of an aside, not like a massive, I guess, topic, but something, it would be amazing if we had some creative hub that we could all have access to, that would enable us to do podcasting, that would enable us to make video, to engage with local businesses, to bring them in to talk about creativity, how they can take their business to the next level, how they can recruit young people and bring them in. What are the aspects of your business that's important that you want to shout about? We can do that through podcasting or video or social media shorts, that sort of thing. So to have that facility, you know, that would just be incredible, because we would all use it and we would all have an opportunity, you know, to be part of that. So yeah, so I think that's, for me, that's sort of where I'm at. That's my sort of background, and that's a bit about some of my passion. I don't think that's 5 minutes, but I'm sure there's stuff there that other people might want to talk about as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Helen. Yeah, really interesting. And I just sharing my reflections on what you've said. And I wonder if this is something special about the creative sector and the creative industries, is when you talk about your work, you really talk about what you love. You know, I love doing this and I love doing that. And I really can relate to that. You know, I work in the creative sector myself. I run a creative computer graphics business, and you know, we're lucky, aren't we? We love our jobs. We love it, you know, you do what you would do as a hobby for a job much of the time. So just reflecting on the language that you were using there, and I think that's a really kind of key selling point for the sector, is doing what we love. And yeah, really thinking about how this sector can support businesses across the region, and strengthen those businesses in their communications and their marketing, particularly in tough times. So plenty to get into there. And you know, we talk a lot about local sourcing for the region, you know, that we want to buy more from local companies, but part of that is knowing who's out there, and it means local firms getting better at engaging with customers across the region. So the communications and marketing side is not just important for those of us in creative businesses, but really for every sector, a key role to play.
And I think it's being more creative ourselves, you know, in terms of the way we think about our businesses and the way people do think about their businesses. You've got to keep thinking about taking it to the next level. How are we going to get to where we want to be? What's it going to take? And creativity is a massive part of that. I think we sometimes forget that, you know, we have the ability to be creative. We have the ability to talk about our business, to share about our business. And that might help get to perhaps where you want to be in terms of, you know, growth and development, because you're bringing more people in, you're thinking differently about your business, you're showcasing it in a completely different way.
And I think that's a key role for creative agencies in working with clients, isn't it? Is being a fresh pair of eyes, being new energy coming in and seeing the business in different ways, and enabling those creative discussions to happen with directors and people who work in the company all the time, and encouraging, giving a bit of space to think creatively about the development of the business. Yeah, really, really exciting work. Thanks, Helen. We'll no doubt come back to you as the session rolls on. But right now, I'd like to introduce Fionn Rees. And Fionn is a company director, producer and editor at Telescope. So Telescope's a TV production company. Welcome, Fionn. Thanks for joining us. And please tell us a bit about yourself and Telescope and what you're up to.
Hello, Shemai. Again, I'm going to apologize if my Wi-Fi drops out. But yes, as Dawn mentioned, I'm a company director with Telescope. Telescope is actually next year will be a 30-year-old production company. We're a television production company mainly. However, we do over 700 hours of radio every year. But we've also just sort of in the last 5 to 6 years, I suppose, started working in the commercial and education sector as well. My background is officially in editing, but I'm now a radio producer as well. I think a lot of these discussions, as we know, is my biggest concern is staffing at the moment. That's what's on my mind most of the time. There's a skills shortage in our industry, not just Wales, not just Swansea, not just Wales, but actually industry-wide in the UK at the moment, in jobs that I don't think people know exist. As a television production company, what we get a lot of is, oh, I want to be a presenter, oh, I want to be a cameraman, I want to be a director. There are a handful of jobs that people are desperate for, and I mean, there are companies begging each other, can we please borrow your editor, can we please borrow your production coordinators and production managers are like gold dust at the moment. And I don't think people know that those jobs exist. Okay, they're not the shiny, jazzy jobs that people might expect. But, you know, they're exciting, they're full on. And actually, one of the things that I've been discussing with a few ex-colleagues who have retired recently, and I've started discussing it with Swansea Uni, is how to get the message out there that those jobs, you know, are opportunities, and that they are jobs. And, you know, work experience is another passion of mine. I did a lot of work experience before I came here. I did a lot of working for free. And I want to pass that on. But the new challenge is also working from home. I've had people here on work experience over the summer with no staff for them to get experience from because the staff don't want to come in. And the other thing is we've been lucky at the moment. We've been able to afford 3 students over the summer, paying them. We've actually been able to afford to bring them in. That is not always the case for us anymore. Obviously, the TV, I'm coming from a TV background, which is obviously as uncertain as many, but with the BBC and Channel 4 things going on, you know, things are a little bit in the air occasionally. I want to do more of that. But again, they're usually wanting to do directors of camera work, etc. Not the ones that I want to keep on. I'm actually keeping one of the students on because she has shown interest in an area that other people don't. And she's brilliant. And that's more of what I want to do. I want to give those people the chances, but it is an open conversation that we need to have.
Really, really interesting. Thanks, Fionn. How many does Telescope employ? And do you use sort of freelancers as well, or is it all employed staff?
So we have 30 staff members across Swansea, and we have a small team based in Carmarthen. On our productions, we do tend to use a lot of freelancers, mainly cameramen or camerawomen, sound, those and directors. Those tend to be the outsourcing to freelancers. We do rely heavily on mob speakers as well, because of the types of productions we do currently.
And who are your key clients? Or are you producing content and then selling the content, or are you producing content for clients?
Yeah, we are producing for clients. So unfortunately, we are currently not in a position to be able to make content and kind of hope for the best and sell it on. So I suppose our main client at the moment would be S4C and BBC Raja Cymru and Radio 2. Those would be the sort of main customers for us at the moment.
And do you find that you've got more demand for work than you can service, or is it the opposite problem? It's a problem in that we have to bid for work. So obviously not just TV and radio, but for commercial work, or I mean, we've had the occasional person come to us to ask us to make videos for their websites, etc. But most things are tendered jobs or idea based that we have to take to the channel to ask them, like, you really want this idea, don't you? Yeah, you really do. And the general ratio I find is you've probably put in 100 ideas and you might get one. So yeah, so that takes a huge amount of resource. Really interesting what you were saying about all those different jobs in the creative sector and in production that people are not aware of, and I definitely think that's a real opportunity area, isn't it, to really amplify the fact that there are so many really interesting jobs. They're not boring jobs. They're exciting jobs at the heart of the action, but they've just got a slightly different focus. And there must be loads of people who would love to work in the creative industries but aren't directly creative people and or don't see themselves that way, and would relish those opportunities if we can get the word out there. Tony, you put your hand up while Fionn was speaking. Do you want to reflect on some of that?
Yeah, please, thanks, Dawn. Just come in really combining a couple of points Zoe made and Helen made, and then Fionn has discussed as well. So my background, like a few others here, is actually media in Wales. I was, as well as having worked in the Llanelli Star and Swansea Sound and the Wave, Swansea Sound as it was then, and the Wave. I was MD of the South Wales Evening Post, MD of Real Radio, when we went as a national commercial service. So we were up against BBC Wales Radio Company. Before I went to London to work in digital. And I think what I'm really passionate about, particularly informed by that journey through digital and into web technologies. And now we're looking at, Web 1, we've been through Web 2.0, now we're looking at Web 3. Web 3.0 and the opportunities that it brings. I think you've got the pandemic, you've got the cost of living crisis, you've got arguably a government that's has abandoned its post, perhaps if I could say that. I hope that's not too controversial. We're not just looking at solving, I want to encourage, we're not just looking at solving existing problems. We're actually now starting to think about how to solve problems that we've never had before. Things like the recruitment problems that Fionn was talking about. People want to work from home. That was always going to happen. But the catalyst of the pandemic was massive. And I still don't think we've fully appreciated just how much that has changed us and changed the world. I was at the forefront in commercial media, at the forefront of digital's attack on traditional media. And, the South Wales Evening Post particularly went from more than 80,000 copies of newspaper every evening, 80,000 copies. Right? If you wanted to be anywhere, you had to be in the Evening Post, to less than 20,000 by the time I was running it as managing director. Revenues, advertising revenues, circulation revenues were just being smashed to pieces. In the meantime, what's happening? Google, Facebook, Instagram, these are second up, right? So the problems that the newspaper had weren't even the problems that it had to worry about anymore. The problems that the radio stations had weren't even the problems they had to worry about anymore. And what I think, particularly be really keen for us to think about is we're in South West Wales, we're in Swansea and Llanelli, Pembrokeshire, call it the Swansea Bay region. We might as well be in Silicon Valley, right? Given the opportunity that we have. We might as well be in London, given the opportunity we have. We don't have the old advantages, but we've got all the new advantages. And this is, for me, what creativity and innovation is about, is thinking about these things in a completely different way now. Not just how do I solve that recruitment issue? Fionn, you've got a totally different problem there. You've got to come up with a huge new set of solutions, including, if you don't mind me saying, your recruitment brand, as we're starting to talk about now. Not just, where can I put a flyer to get my production slot filled, but how do I communicate with people about what Telescope actually offers and offers to young people who are so disengaged? They're not reading the newspapers, they're not even on Facebook, they're not listening to radio, they're probably not watching the telly. Mm-hmm. How do you even reach them? Right? These are brand new problems that we have to solve. And it's fantastic and exciting because actually we've got the ability to solve them where we are today. We've actually bust all the things. We don't have to be in London anymore. We don't have to be in Silicon Valley. We don't have to be, we've got as long as we've got broadband and a decent level of broadband, as long as you've got laptops, as long as you've got computers, and Helen was talking about video. I mean, video. If you're in business today and you're not doing video, you are going to go out of business. It's as simple as that. Think back to, I love this analogy, right? Think back to the 1920s. And think back to I've just been through 2000s, 1990, 2000, 2010, 2020. Think of the revolutions that were going on then in Industry 1, in the Industrial Revolution, even a few years. We're going through that again. Everything is changing. Everything is changing, and we have the opportunities, and the kids today particularly have opportunities to do whatever they want to do, to be entrepreneurs, to be publishers, to be broadcasters, to be business people, to be traders, to be whatever it is they want to do. And if they can't find a space for themselves, they can invent a space for themselves. And that's why I'm really passionate about creative industries and about innovation and our area particularly, because we've got everything. We've got everything that we might want. We just need to activate it, I think.
Yeah, that's a really exciting take. Thanks, Tony, for sharing some thoughts and insights there. I think new problems to solve, and particularly this trend towards remote working and working from home. I think there are serious pros and cons and different challenges to grapple with. And yeah, really interesting to get into some of that. And I'm sure we'll unpack more of those themes as we go forward. But these are fast changing times, absolutely fast changing times, and everything is on the table. And we really want to see local firms and local people really grasping those, because the world is changing quickly. Right, I'd like to move on and introduce our third speaker, and this is my good friend Rachel Wheatley. So Rachel is a founding director at Waters Creative. Waters Creative was founded around the same time that I founded my own business, I Create, in Swansea many years ago. And Waters has gone from strength to strength as a creative agency. And Rachel is really passionate about all of this, and particularly about young people and the employment opportunities in this sector. So Rachel, thanks for being here. Tell us a little bit about Waters and your journey, and what are the challenges and opportunities that you guys are grappling with at the moment?
Great, thanks very much, Dawn. So I'm here today, I think, with a couple of hats on. The first hat being sort of director of Waters Creative. So we work with sort of companies all across the UK, and people starting up on sort of frameworks, all to sort of develop their brands, their perception, how they're presented in the real world. And particularly in COVID, a lot of our sort of way that we worked had to change, because of course overnight everything that we did, which was event led, all came to a massive halt. And so a lot of our business has sort of changed in the last sort of 2 years to sort of be more about online and digital. And that is probably representative of many businesses within the creative sector, not just ours. So we're a team of 10 individuals, and yeah, as everybody said, we're really passionate about what we do. We all love what we do. We all love sort of creating things that are going to move our clients sort of forward in terms of where they are and what they're doing and who they're able to reach out to. Another hat that I have on here, and I'm not sure whether anybody else is sort of a Big Ideas Wales role model, but that is you know, going out, trying to inspire young people to join our creative sector, sharing with them some of the work and some of the opportunities within the industry. And that's really exciting. We can get in sort of at a really early age, which I think is really useful there, because I was inspired by listening to a designer when I was young. I wanted to be a designer, you know, and that's all you need. And I wanted to run my own business because she ran her own business. And it's just planting those seeds sometimes that really helps inspire the future. So I also help run something called Design Swansea, and we've had to put that on hold. So it was a monthly design event that was held in the Swansea area. We'd have 2 speakers in, inspiring students, getting businesses together, allowing people to form sort of opportunities and connections, get jobs, get freelance work and get actual jobs. That obviously has stopped, but it's starting back up this week, which we are super, super excited about. But then another hat again, so this is like the fourth hat. I'm here as chair of the Gower College Industries Board, and I can see that Jenny Hill is here. Hi, Jen, who I work with there. And so we've set up a board, a creative industries board, to try and identify the challenges that are being faced within the industry, but then also to help shape the curriculum so that we are teaching the students of today what our industry is going to need tomorrow. And we need as many people as possible to input into this, so we can make sure that we are representing the creative industry as a whole, not just sort of it being one-sided, not just graphic design, not just branding, not just media, but everything that goes with it. So I'm really passionate about the industry, the fact that we've got so many talented entrepreneurs, or even people don't even realize they're entrepreneurs in the area. And I'm really excited to see the sort of industry thrive and businesses succeed. And I just was just checking back my notes that I'd written on one of our creative industries boards about COVID. And I just wanted to read a couple of my notes because I think they still stand true. So yes, of course, the industry has been massively affected this time. We've kind of had a pause. We've had to sort of, all momentum that we had going in the region has kind of come to a bit of a stop, and we need to sort of build that back up again. This is a primary example just here today of the way that we can do that. Design Swansea is another one. There are other events as well that people can start to sort of get out and about and start chatting to people in the sector and learn from each other. You know, some businesses have thrived during the pandemic, some have had to sort of change dramatically, and others haven't survived. But what that just highlights to me is the value of the creative sector. Everybody needs creativity, not just the creative sector. And I think it's that realization that we need to get across and sort of big ourselves up about, and everybody that's thinking of going into the sector, highlight to them what the benefits are of working within our sector. Jenny sort of shared with me in our prep work for an upcoming board meeting that we've got, that now I think the figure is something like 40% of pupils do not want to do a degree now. They want to go down the sort of apprentice route, and that's massive. But it's also in line with the Welsh Government's sort of, well, Future Generations Act and what they're trying to do there. And then what can we do as an industry to make sure that there are opportunities in the creative sector for those people that want to get into it? So there's lots of different things that are emerging from that particular sort of discussion that we're having there. I'm going to share my screen really, really quickly and just sort of show you what the Creative Industry Board with Gower College is all about. Basically, we want to sort of raise awareness of what's going on in the sector, what the opportunities are. We want to inspire people to join our sector, to get involved, but also we want to make change. So by merging these, what we're trying to do is make the sector in the creative industry sector in the region future-proof. And we can do that in a number of ways. Because we're creative people, we've identified that we can do things like tell our stories. Somebody mentioned that earlier, you know, our experiences, you know, inform education and what it is that we need, provide feedback on people's portfolios and things that are looking to sort of go into the industry, answer questions, set live commercial projects, sort of create belief in our sector to really start to sort of, you know, nurture it and grow it. And I think, if we've all got that attitude, I think, you know, particularly here and everybody that has attended today, you know, that we want to drive our industry forward, we want to sort of show our worth, we want to add value, not just to our sector and other sectors, then working together is obviously the way forward, because we can't do it alone. We might be able to do a part of that by running internships or going out and speaking to people, but we, you know, together we're going to be able to do this, you know, a lot easier than if we're working alone. And then these are some of the challenges that actually came out right at the beginning. And I think these overlap a bit with what we've already heard this morning. So like one of the reasons maybe why people don't want to go into the creative sector is because it's been drilled into people as well that they should go into the STEM subjects. So it's almost like as if we need to influence the parents of young people wanting to go into our sector as well, to show just what the opportunities are there. We need to invite the parents in, we need to sell our sector. You know, do we sort of put together more case studies? Do we sort of, you know, gather more role models to inspire young people? You know, how do we talk about what we do and the successes that we create enough is another sort of thing that has come out, another sort of theme. But then also looking for sort of differentiators, what's going to make our offering different. And that's a little bit like what Tony was just talking about now. Like we've got everything that we need in order to grow and expand and develop, but how do we tell people what it is that we've got and how do we stand out, you know, in the region? And I think, you know, everybody will have ideas how to do that. But one thing that I keep saying to everybody is creativity is a superpower. Not everybody has it. And yeah, the people that have creativity and the way that presents itself can be in so many different ways. but you know, it's so powerful. So why can't we set our creative sector on the global stage, you know, and have that standout offering that is really going to set us apart from any competition? And yeah, so that's some of the sort of topics that we are sort of covering in the Creative Industries Board. Jen, I don't know whether you want to sort of add anything on, because you're from Gower College, and maybe some of the differences that you've seen that inputted in a sort of a young age, what kind of difference that makes.
No, I'd echo exactly what you said. You know, Rachel, I think STEM has been at the top of the agenda for such a long time that the sort of creative arts, the humanities have been sort of pushed aside a bit, but the tide is turning. We're seeing a new revolution. You know, it is becoming a really attractive sector to sort of, you know, work in and work towards. And we are trying to nurture the philosophies that Rachel's talked about. We're trying to do the education. It was interesting, you know, Fionn talked about different roles and having a lack of awareness of roles within the sector. So that's something that we're trying to address with young people, their parents, careers, education. And we are, you know, using, I don't know if you've got Judy on, I'm not sure, but you know, some of the resources that have been prepared at sort of Welsh Government level to sort of really highlight the different roles. There's thousands, you know, so that's what we're working on as well. So yeah, no, great, thank you, Rachel.
So I can see that, it's gone into the chat about STEAM, isn't it? Not STEM, and that's one of the things that we are trying to sort of embed within the sort of curriculum, is that, you know, take our sector seriously. This is what we can do, you know, and sort of so that people realise the power and the value of creativity.
Yeah, I agree. I think traditionally they've sat as separate entities, but you know, like you say, how creativity with innovation, you know, they do go hand in hand. The sciences do need creativity.
Thank you so much. Well, both of you really doing important work there with the employer board, and I think, as Rachel's outlined there, employers in the creative sector have a really, really important role to play and can make a massive difference for young people considering their career choices. And Rachel, you've spoken a lot very eloquently about all the different ways that employers can engage with young people, and I think it's part of building for the future, isn't it? It's planting those seeds as early as possible with young people when they're making those career choices. And I think we've also reflected, haven't we, that sometimes the educators, whether that's the teachers or the lecturers or the careers advisors within schools and colleges, are not always best placed to know exactly what the opportunities are. So there's a real job to do in making sure we're communicating really well with those helping children and young people make their career choices. And that's a sort of really interesting statistic, isn't it? That 40% of pupils are not looking at doing a degree. I think we can all look at why that might be, and certainly consider whether we would advise young people that they need a degree. There are lots of other routes into careers in the creative industries. Yeah, thanks, Rachel. You covered loads and loads, and there are some comments and questions coming in. So I'll hand over, and I'm sure we'll come back to you. From the Elysium Gallery, hi, thanks for coming.
Hello. Yeah, just more comment on the education, really, and the degrees. I think I lecture in Carmarthen College of Art on the degree and on the foundation, and I think we're getting a lot of people in that don't want to do a degree. They want to do more of a practical based kind of course. So that may be a year or 2 years tops, you know, but obviously the only funding they can get is for a degree. So I think you've got a lot of people going in for degrees that don't really want to do them. But I think if there was some funding out there that would allow more 2-year courses. I mean, I'm old school, so I did an ND, then I did a HND, and then I did a degree. So my HND was 2 years, my ND was 2 years, my HND was 2 years. Within 4 years, that enabled me and gave me all of the foundation practically to be a photographer. And then obviously I could go in, and what's happening now is people are going on to degrees, missing out foundation. There's a lot of universities getting rid of the foundation and pushing them straight through to degree, and they're not learning that foundation. They're not learning those skills. So those people that are going into industry don't have those skills. So even if they have creative ideas, they don't necessarily know how to express them because they don't have that foundation. So I think if there was some pressure or a group or someone, where Welsh Government could roll out funding. So rather than getting funding for a degree for 1-3 years, you could just do 1 year or 2 years. You could tie that in with apprenticeships. So 1 year do foundation, or 1 year do what equivalent of an ND or HND, and then go on to an apprentice. So people, like Fionn and can scoop those people up then having a year on, and then obviously, but they've got that funding there. Those 3 years aren't tied in with one course. So they can move around and do these skills and then go into industry. So they're learning the design skills, they're learning that, and they're learning how to do that. And I think Carmarthen is suffering because of that, because they're trying to attract people onto degree and people don't want to do that. Does that make sense? Yeah. So
Yeah.
It's that kind of, we're training people, they're going into education and we're pointing them in the wrong direction almost. So I think if there was an opportunity for someone leaving school or they do a foundation just to do a 1 year funded course, and then they can go into an apprenticeship then without having to do the 3 years. And degrees are all pretentious. I mean, obviously I teach on the degree, but they are based a lot around ideas rather than actual technique, so there's a skill, we're missing out a platform there, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of us can reflect on, the real value of kind of art foundation and the broad diversity of experiences that you get from something like that as a foundation for making career choices. And so it's really interesting point there, Dan. Thank you for that. Lee, would you like to come in as well?
Yeah, thanks. Maybe just a couple of quick points. When I was living in Sri Lanka, the creative sector was emerging really, and the British Council came and asked me to help put together a report on the value of the economic value of the creative sector, which is based upon the work that the Design Council does to periodically release a review of the value of the creative sector to the economy as a whole. And like, it occurs to me that, with this aspiration we're talking about and the sort of people aspiring towards STEM and forgetting arts and anarchy and all the other interesting A's that go to make STEAM, how do you create that interest and aspiration to be part of the creative sector? Money does kind of talk, and understanding the value of it means that you can then yell at the government to support it, and you can yell at the schools to support it, and you can yell at the parents to support it and say, look, there's money in this. And the Design Council report, I think, is it probably is regional. I haven't gone into the granularity of it, but like, where's Wales's report on its the economic power of the creative sector, and like, like maybe For the Region could champion something like that. It's complicated territory, but maybe you could get support from the Design Council to create the first steps, or to work with them and say, like, look at this, because that report from the Design Council says things like it's the only sector, the creative economies is the only sector that's grown through the recession. So then we do know that our sector is a survivor and is the one that creates jobs, creates money, creates onward value, creates things like intellectual property, which means that you keep intelligence in your country, and so on and so forth. So it's a really valuable thing to maybe think about doing in order to yell about, the talent is there. What does it result in? What's the economic value? And because that's something that people can always say, oh, well, look, it creates jobs, great, go and do that job. And then a second point, which is totally different, but touching all the way back to the first comment about a creative space. My top tip for home working as the cost of living crisis starts to bite is to use the public libraries, which are spaces that are public that you can sit and work in. And I saw ages ago a sort of call for them to be turned into creative public spaces, because, you know, books, whatever, such a, you know, I love books, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, like, who reads books? But there's all that amazing space there, which is funded, and they tend to be in quite interesting big buildings where you could have things like maker spaces, you know, super high speed internet, you know, free to use desks to go and do things, and soldering stations and Arduinos and like goodness knows what else. But you know, because I look at the paid for desk space and it's suddenly an immediate barrier to entry, 30 quid for a day. I'm probably going to only drop in for a couple of hours. You know, it's not really worth it. So then I end up sitting as I am now in my windowsill. But I go to the public library and it doesn't cost me anything, and they have great big desk space and it's warm and it's got internet and so on and so forth. So how can we creatively think about spaces we already have that are public, that we can maybe transition the use into things that are going to support innovation, design, and economic well-being, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, interesting. I know at least one of our number this afternoon is sitting in a public library taking part in this call. So I think that says a little wave from Pearl there. But yeah, interesting to think how we could expand that. And I think there's a lot to talk about with the remote working and working from home, and particularly in the creative sector. You know, I've certainly found in our business that we've been really keen to get people back into the office because of the creativity that gets sparked when you're working together, the ability to feed back on people's work as it develops. Fionn mentioned that issue of how do you train new people and bring new people into the business if you haven't got anyone in the office. And, you know, in times gone by, it would have absolutely been expected that people would come in at least 9 till 5 days a week. And now actually we really have to make the case and win the argument and grapple with the fact that actually a lot of people have got very comfortable working from home. They can go and work from home for companies in London and Los Angeles without leaving their bedroom. So we've really got to sell people on the idea that they want to come into a creative studio environment again and be part of the team. And we've also got to adapt to be flexible to make it work for those that really don't want to come in. And in a way, it opens up the pool of talent for people not to have to make those really long commutes into Swansea from West Wales and elsewhere. So yeah, interesting opportunities. But if you can create co-working spaces that enable some kind of creativity and collaboration in local places where people live, libraries is one suggestion. That is an interesting avenue. Helen, what did you want to say on that?
Yeah, I just think if we're talking about skills and developing young people and bringing young people into our businesses, working from home isn't really an option. So my son is 21. He now works for my husband from home, creating animated videos for Mark's e-learning company. And he's doing really well, but he is so suffering from not having interaction with other people. I think there's a place for remote working, like you say, if, you know, certainly having meetings like this on Zoom, if you've got companies in London and you want to save on travel, absolutely. But I think if we're talking about our young people and bringing on skills and developing them, they have to be in a work environment. Working from home is not going to inspire or drive them on any further by asking them to. That's my opinion just by watching Morgan, and I feel for him. Wants to develop his skills, wants to do something great, but it's all working from home at the minute.
Yeah, Fionn, did you want to come in on that as well?
Yeah, I think there's we've just taken on a couple of new staff members, and we've in the interview started being like, right, where do you want to work? And you know, most of them, especially the graduates, want to come into the office. They've just had a frankly tough time in university where they've not seen anyone, and they don't want to start their career the same way. Another issue we're having, similar to you, we're not getting that creative buzz of people yelling things across the office and sparking ideas. But also we have a percentage of staff who don't have a choice, have to be in the office. And I've had to be in the office throughout the entire lockdown. We were actually, because of the nature of our work, we were given permission letters to travel to work because of our current affairs work. So there are 3 people that I know of who have been coming in for the last 3 years, no questions asked. And actually the tension being caused between, well, we don't want to come in, and then them going, well, what's the difference? Why are you making an issue? It's a tricky situation for us to now be in. You know, it's not getting too bad yet, but it is something that's on the horizon that I'm foreseeing. A lot of our staff are West based, but they have been. One of the arguments, unfortunately, I'm using, well, you were West based before the pandemic and when you took the job, and we haven't moved. But I'm also taking into consideration there is a cost of living problem at the moment. But it's such a it's a bit of a minefield ahead. And I think a lot of them, going back to sort of the work experience thing that I was mentioning before, a lot of them are actually in this position because of work experience that they had. And I think that they forget the opportunities that they had 10, 15 years ago, that they are now actually stopping the new generation from having.
Interesting. Yeah, really, really interesting that. And yeah, keeping those opportunities open that we benefited from. And yeah, and I think for all our mental well-being, and Rachel's just posted in the chat that we might think we want to work from home and it's really convenient and we don't have to have the commute or get dressed. But actually, when we're back in the office, back with our colleagues again, we actually love being in the office, don't we? And that is where so much of life happens. And so I think actually when people get back to work in the office, you know, it is enjoyable to be in work with other people again, but really difficult conversations to have with new and existing employees. And I see that tension as well between those people who haven't got a choice, they have to go into work, and then others who perhaps have the luxury of choice and flexibility. Tony, I know you're waiting to come in. I'm going to move on to our 4th speaker so that we don't run out of time, and then we can elaborate more on all of these themes and discussion topics. And yes, keeping a little eye on the time as well. So our 4th speaker this afternoon is Caris Ivan, and she is director of Eregin, which is in Carmarthen. Eregin is a fantastic venue. I think it's a collaboration between S4C and University of Wales Trinity St David, a building that lots of exciting creative stuff happens in. So Caris, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Tell us what you're up to and reflect on some of the themes and topics that we've already covered, and whatever else you'd like to share.
Great, thank you very much, Dawn. I have to say, I think I've arrived with, I was going to say this, and now since listening to everybody, I'm probably going to be saying this now. Felly, pnawn da a diolch yn fawr am y gwahoddiad. So just to give a little bit of my background in the creative industries, then I've probably been in those jobs. Ffion thinks people don't exist. The production team, that's where I've been in the past, and always loved it, working in drama, in television, an AD in that AD role, and then in terms of theatre, then producers, theatre for National Theatre of Wales, Theatre Genedlaethol, the Welsh language, and then always in that sort of production roles and different things. So events is also part of my background. And it's interesting, isn't it, when you think of yourself as your younger self, all these sort of jobs, a lot of them I was doing based in Cardiff, freelance, working for myself, going from job to job. And then when I moved back to live in West Wales, thought, oh, I'll get a really boring job now when I'm working in West Wales. And then suddenly the opportunities and the work and the different projects I've been doing are just so exciting and so creative. So it really, that's why I feel that I, as the director of this centre, have got a big role to play to make sure young people understand what the opportunities are in this area and actually around them as well. So it is about that continuous education of how do they get to know about the opportunities that are out there. And I'm really excited that I'm going tomorrow, a little bit scared, that I'm going tomorrow to stand in front of all the head teachers of Carmarthenshire, junior schools and secondary schools, and I'll have a half-hour platform to tell them about the creative industries and their egging and what they can achieve and how can that really fit in with the new curriculum for Wales, and how they can use us to feed into that as well, to make sure that it's not teachers trying their best with it, that they can really use expertise and people from the industry to feed into how our young people think about the creative industries, and that they move, and I think a lot of them have, from being consumers to being creators themselves as well, and that they have those tools to do that. I don't know about you, but my son spent a lot of lockdown watching American YouTubers. So really it's about now, you can create your own content, you have to be doing this, you have to know how to do this as well. So we'll be talking to the schools in Carmarthenshire to make sure that they know they can make the most of their egging and what this opportunity is. So maybe that's a good point for me to explain a little bit of what their egging is as well. So back in 2014, I don't know if you can all remember that far, pre-pandemic, but SLC asked the question, should we move out of Cardiff? And then it went into a competitive process, and different places, I think from village halls in different tiny villages, to the bid put together by the University of Wales, Trinity St David's here in Carmarthen, were put before SLC, and the authority then for SLC said, yes, we are going to relocate, and we're going to relocate to Carmarthen to a creative hub. So that's what an egging is. It's a creative and digital hub here in Carmarthen for people to make use of, and for different companies. And there's been a lot of talk of freelancers and SMEs this morning, and it's a chance to bring together those SMEs for people to work together to bounce those ideas together, even if they're working for different companies and in different parts of the creative industries. And it's just all about those initial corridor conversations, how they can work in partnership to grow their businesses as well. So in a way, when COVID hit, we sort of went, the whole idea about bringing people together and that they can co-locate is completely not what COVID allowed. But so it was an interesting 2 years for us. But the truth was, maybe after the first initial, are we going to have any tenants left after the end of this pandemic? Truth is, there wasn't much movement at all. And we've still got 17 companies who are based here with office space. Now, why have those here co-locating? Yes, they can grow their own businesses, but also it's about the talent pipeline coming from the university, and that they have those experiences. They get to see what's happening. So those maybe who are on degree apprentices courses, that they have that hands-on, and Trinity has always been very much about hands-on real life experiences in industry. So it's bringing them through. So we have people like Avanti come in and do the Jonathan Light End program. All the students then have a chance to be on that Light End program, see how that is filmed, what the pressures are on the floor, on the set, how do you get that together? They get to go in to see the truck and how all that moves. And then of course, if they're good, they're offered more work. So there have been a lot of students who then have moved on, doing paid work for that company following those experiences. So we're really there to facilitate that happening as well. And Trinity is also dual sector. So Coleg Sir Gâr, we work a lot with Coleg Sir Gâr to make sure those students also know where the opportunities are. Because I don't know about you, but what breaks my heart more about people who follow creative industry courses and then don't know how to get into the industry. So it's really about joining those dots up and making sure that they know where they can go, where those opportunities are. And we've also got internships as well recently, and just seeing them grow and placing them at different places. A lot of work experience happens here as well. And maybe the companies themselves as SMEs haven't got the time to be having somebody on work experience for a whole week, but we assist with that, facilitating that then. Maybe they have a couple of hours with that company, just so they have an idea of what's happening. But a lot of people then have picked up those people who come in from work experience. I know that Iestyn, who lives just up the road, he's on a degree course at the minute, editing, but he's brought in every summer when he's back in Carmarthen by a local company. So it's just seeing that, and maybe that's a micro enghraifft, what's an enghraifft, Fionn? Example. But it is really about that and starting to join those dots about different things happening. So, and I think now it's about moving on, and it is about advocacy, and it is about going to Creative Wales and making sure that people know that there is this creative talent and creative sector in West Wales. I think prior to Regin being established, there were some people that even questioned from Cardiff, oh, is there such a thing as a creative sector in West Wales? So now we can wholly say, yes, there is. There's a cluster of companies and that's developing more and more. And I know that there's more of that in Swansea as well. But it is about us talking to each other as well, I think, recognising ourselves and the expertise and all this creativity that we've got and really making the most of it. So it is a really exciting time now, I think, coming out of lockdown, really going into an autumn where I hope we'll be actually seeing each other, talking more to each other as well, to see how we can develop things. And with the establishment of Creative Wales, I think that brings in a lot more opportunity and funding streams as well for people to look at. And of course, they have a duty to fund things throughout the West of Wales, not just in the Cardiff region. So it really is about, please use us. That's part of my message today as well, I think, is please let us know about those other things. Skills and talent is a problem. We do sit on the meeting. I think there's a quarterly meeting about skills and talent is quite large under Creative Wales use, but then also a colleague of mine, he sits on the board for skills and talent as well. So we can funnel those problems, let people know as well. But it is, as you were saying earlier, and I think Fiona was saying this as well, is that we have to go back and see how we're training these people to make sure this skills shortage is really looked at, and that we can, and I think maybe sometimes it's about trying to fast track people through, but the skills that is needed now is a little bit different as well. We've been interviewing for a technician recently, and it really is, our technician role is, whoa, what a one-stop shop. We expect so much from that role. And it's quite interesting to see maybe people who've gone through other companies where they've just been in one role, be it a camera person role or a sound role, but actually we're expecting that they can do all of that. And I think the expectation from industry is more and more that people can do everything, that they really are rounded and that they can understand the IT, etc. as well. So, but it was really heartening for us that we had so many applications for that role as well. And we had Rodri from Gorilla, which is a post-production company who we work with quite a bit, on the interview panel as well. And he was saying, well, actually, they probably don't get, they probably get the same number of applications for roles with them as well. So it's interesting how maybe the individuals are looking for more fulfilling roles and are looking to be part of the whole experience of creating content and not just wanting to be the camera person. They want to be part of the ideas and producing the whole thing as well. So it's how is industry going to change to allow those people to be those whole part of the process as well, which is really exciting, how we look forward to what this industry will be in the next 5 to 10 years as well. So it is a really exciting time. I did have a whole presentation I was going to show you, but I'm not going to show the whole presentation, but I am just going to show a couple of slides, so you can see what a Regin is, and please do come and see us and visit us here, or give us a chat and contact us as well, because we have got those networks into different places. So there's post-production facilities, there's a whole load of different production companies, events companies, publishers, subtitlers, all based here as well. So there's a lot of those that we facilitate for. There's a lot of events that happen here as well, and Q&As on different things. So it is really bringing everything together in that creative and digital hub. So that is what we're here for. So that's the end of my speech today.
Oh, Caris, wow, that's really inspiring, and obviously a fantastic place for small businesses and growing companies to be based. You really explored quite a few of those amazing benefits of co-location, which I think really resonate with small businesses, you know, because you can feel very isolated and kind of dealing with these challenges on your own. So yeah, what you talked about there around, you know, work experience collaboratively across a network of companies and sharing of resources and skills. So really, really fantastic to have that facility in our region. And you mentioned Creative Wales, and I think there is an opportunity for a network like For the Region with partners in this room to consider what would be our ask of Creative Wales, because we've had a conversation with colleagues in Creative Wales, and as you've said there, Caris, they have got a responsibility to spread their funding out across the regions of Wales, and we need a bit of joined up thinking about what is our ask, what would we like to propose that we could do to Creative Wales, and I think the door there is open. One of the things you said that resonates with me is about how you break your heart around those young people who perhaps have aspirations into the creative industries and do a college course or something and then don't end up working in that sector and end up with you know, roles in retail or whatever, which isn't what they really wanted to do. And so there's a real missed opportunity there, and when we're all crying out for creative people.
And sorry to interrupt you there, Dawn, but I was at a Twisted event recently, and it was quite interesting as well in terms of if we were talking about bringing in people from different backgrounds as well. I think the idea of maybe being self-employed and freelance is a really hard one for people from different backgrounds, where they really need a wage, and they need a wage to know that they are going to pay the bills for that week. Or so it's, you know, the industry has to look at how we can sustain more jobs, because it's been changed, hasn't it, from your big players like BBC into more people who are freelancers rather than staff. So how do we make sure that the makeup of the industry changes as well? So I think that's a really important question for us to ask as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole landscape is just changing all the time, isn't it? I think there's upward pressure on salaries at the moment. There's a cost of living crisis. We're competing with, as I said earlier, companies that people can work remotely for companies in bigger cities, etc. So there's, in my experience, a real upward pressure on salaries that companies in the region need to be able to pay. And hopefully there's also a bit of an upward pressure on prices that companies in the region can charge for their work, but that's not always the same. I'm interested in how businesses can take ownership of their skills shortages, and just want to share some reflections with a different one of my hats on. So as a co-founder of a 3D computer animation company here in Swansea, and we are growing, and we're now a team of 20 people, and we have really struggled over the years really to find people with the right skill set to employ, quite specialist. We're an architectural visualization company. We build 3D models of virtual environments, and we've really found it difficult to find people with the right skills. And even those coming out of University of Wales, Trinity St David's, they've got aspirations to go off and work in games and in movies, and they might not be thinking about architectural visualization as a pathway, and that's always been a challenge for us. And then in the last, well, since January really, we've just had a kind of change of approach and decided that actually we need to take that on board ourselves and see what we can do to upskill people ourselves. And it's completely transformed our whole approach to recruitment, and it means that now we're able to recruit people with very little experience or skills in what we already want them to do. And so we started sort of advertising on Facebook and on Instagram, and really the message is, even if you've not got any experience in 3D modeling, if you're just interested in digital and creative, we can train you in-house in the things that we need you to be able to do. And we've, you know, it's simple, but we've been, we found videos on YouTube, loads of video courses and things that we can access and pay for, subscribe to, that other people have made. We've created a Trello kind of board where people can work their way through a training program, and obviously they're in the office surrounded by our more experienced senior team. But I have to say the real key to this has been that we haven't got a huge amount of time in our senior team to spend training people up, because our senior team are really, really busy doing work for clients. So we needed to find a way where people could have that opportunity to train, but they didn't use a huge amount of our own staff resources, because that's a real challenge. And so tapping into digital resources that are out there, you can learn anything you want, can't you, on things like Udemy and specialist platforms that have lots of training courses. But of course you can think, well, people can sit at home and train themselves to do whatever on these online courses. But actually the feedback that we've had from people who've been through this training program with us and subsequently been employed in permanent jobs, and just to mention that it's a paid traineeship, so we'll pay you to come and sit in our studio and train. And the progression that you see from people with no experience in the tools that we need them to use, they're spending 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, dedicated to watching these training courses, getting involved in some of our projects, shadowing members of our team. The intensity of that learning experience is far greater perhaps than they might have got even if they had gone to do a degree, because they're dedicating, and it's certainly far greater than you could hope to train yourself just in the evenings after work or anything like that. So it's been really a game changer for us, and I'm only talking about it because I wonder whether other companies could consider something similar, whereby you can create your own in-house training program, which means that actually then you can open your doors to a much broader diversity of different people who are either looking for a career change later in life, or young people who don't want to go to university or haven't found their niche and quite like the idea, and it's brought a whole new energy into our team. So yeah, that's been a really interesting journey, and one that I would encourage others to consider. Lee, your hand is up. What were you going to say?
Yeah, just to sort of second that, really, when I had my business in Sri Lanka, I employed on enthusiasm first, because there wasn't even an industrial design degree in the country when I moved there. So I wasn't going to get anyone who was a graduate industrial designer to come and work for me. But I know that if someone is enthusiastic enough and has a bit of spark, you can get them trained up in anything. And all the software has become so much more accessible. A lot of work has been done on making that side of things easier, let's face it. So then, yeah, enthusiasm wins. And I think there's like a second angle to what you said, which I picked up on, was that if someone's got a real interest in something, even if it's not my core business, it's possible I could make money from it. So, so you might find that someone comes in who's incredible at 3D modeling transformers and animating them into incredible things. And instead of saying like, I want houses, you'd be like, I have a business here rendering robots, So actually there are other avenues you can, that energy coming from up someone's interest can actually be a business opportunity rather than an annoying thing they appear to be doing sat in the background when you want them to be modeling trees or something.
Yeah, and that is the flexibility that you have as a small company, isn't it? That, you really are led by the passions and enthusiasms of your core team. And so that's one of the things that's an exciting opportunity, is to play to the strengths and the interests of members of the team. And yeah, recruiting for a positive mental attitude is key. And it's one of the things, I've said this to Rachel in the employers board at Gower College, is one of the messages I think we need to get across to young people is as much about your attitude, your enthusiasm. What are we looking for as employers? Of course, we're hoping for people who come fully formed with all the skills that we need them to have. But what we really, really want is enthusiasm, curiosity, energy to put into the early years of their career. We can all look back at the early years of our own careers and think, I work bloody hard, I work long hours, I really spent a lot of time building my business, and we want young people coming into our businesses that have got that level of commitment, that they recognise they've got to invest those first early years of their career in really learning, really growing, really, you know, being a solid team player. And of course, as you go through your career, you want more flexibility, and obviously we all, you know, want to look after our own lives and mental health and have balance as well. But yeah, what are we looking for in young people, and are we getting those messages across, that actually attitude, enthusiasm and mindset is so important as well. Really fascinating discussion. Who else would like to reflect on anything we've heard? James, I saw you had your hands up earlier and then you put it down again, so do feel free to come in if you have anything to share.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of brilliant things to reflect on. I'll try to remember. Obviously, Dan, I did the foundation course years ago, and you know, I can't really put into words how beneficial it was, kind of at that stage of my life, having such a free, creative environment to kind of think. And you know, that wasn't really available in A-levels in college, and really the beginning of university. And I think when I went through uni, because I studied design in London, my dissertation was on broken systems, and one of those was education. And I feel let down in some aspects of terms of like the opportunity coming out of there, or just the ability to like try stuff. I feel like at a young age, when you're in school, there's a lot of pressure on you to do well in these things. And, you know, there's only like 14 or so subjects when there's millions of jobs in the world. You know, why can't we be trying, you know, new and exciting things? So I always felt frustrated in that sense. Obviously, all the work I do now mostly has been self-taught, you know, just curiosity on the internet of like, you know, how do I code a website or an app, or how do I build a game, how do I 3D model, you know. I've started learning Unreal Engine, this, and you know, it's just YouTube and things like that. But I think you raised a good point about and it's really admirable actually from a business standpoint, creating your own training program. I feel like that makes so much sense, because I think my answer to it years ago was like, why can't we have kind of like a modular university? Because there's a lot of lecturers who get bogged down by bureaucracy in their kind of colleges and unis, and lose touch with innovation and what's happening. You know, stuff moves really, really fast. So, you know, if there was a way to bridge that gap, I feel that would be really, really, really good. Caris also, I remember, I can't remember how long ago it was, but I did come to visit Oregon. I think it was before I went to London. And I was just really, really inspired, to be honest, to see such a space like that. I think Lee touched on something really good as well about creating these environments, you know, these maker spaces where people have the freedom to create and build and collaborate. I think that's a fantastic idea. I wanted to ask Caris, actually, if I was to come back to this space, I can't remember it exactly, if you had a green screen room, but I wanted to try, I don't know if you've seen how they shot The Mandalorian with the volume. I wanted to try the kind of real-time Unreal Engine thing. I don't know if I can come.
Yes, please. When do you want to come? Are you free next week?
Next week, yeah.
Have a play. And I also forgot to say about there's hot desking here as well. So, you know, how big if you're just by yourself or freelance, and we're also very keen to see people growing their businesses and what we can support, because there's the university team as well, the Inspire team as they're called now, which is the business support, which is very much about seeing smaller businesses growing and helping people, maybe, because I think often creatives do the creatives very easily, but the business side of things and how do you make that into a business doesn't always come naturally.
No, that's a really good point. It's kind of what's inspired my next project. Basically, the last year I spent in Redigo School. So I was training, well, I wasn't meant to go there for that reason, but it basically gave me a space and they were like, you know, make it interesting. So I just kind of brought everything I'd learned to the space, and my aspiration to kind of create opportunities for kids in different areas, blah, blah, blah. So we essentially like ripped the room apart, pulled out all the old furniture, you know, painted the walls. And I worked then with the kids to create the space. So we designed it together. You know, we did the carpentry, we built like the desks, we wired up like surround sound speakers. And, you know, we got all the equipment. So we got music production stuff like Ableton Push. We've got, you know, 3D printers there. We've got VR headsets, kind of DJ decks already there. As kind of like a DigiLab, you know, a space to kind of have fun and play. But what was really eye-opening for me, I mean, I stayed there a lot longer than I should have, mainly because of the kids, you know, and their potential. Like when I first went there, obviously it's a special school, a lot of them struggle with kind of ADHD and autism, and seeing them in the conventional system of learning was crazy. It was like chaos, you know. I was really taken aback by that. And you know, there was one boy I spent some time with who like he was smashing a room up when I got there, and he was on his computer, and I just went over to sit next to him and try to see what he was up to. And he'd like hacked into this game. He'd like changed the source files, like he was running his own artwork. I was like, you're 11 years old, like how are you doing this? This is amazing. And it's the same story for a lot of other kids there, you know. So we ran a project called kind of Not All Superheroes Wear Capes. And one of the boys, I see him working for Marvel, you know, every time he comes to me, he's like, oh, James, I've just, we need to build this suit, this invisibility suit. I was like, oh, okay, like how are we going to do that? He's like, oh, if we have a camera on the front with like a flexible screen that's going to show us on the back, and the same on the other side, like you can like see through. I was like, that's fantastic. And he came up with this superhero called Zero G, who could like control gravity. So basically a lot of the work of what I did with the kids there was bringing these ideas to life. So we modeled like this Zero G character in Blender. You know, we animated like helicopters flying in, like this is all his idea. We produced kind of like the intro music to the scene, almost like a trailer. And then he blew me away actually with the microphone. It was just sitting there. We're like, oh, let's like freestyle a rap or whatever to like come up with ideas. And he just started, you know, flowing. He came up with all these amazing storylines that we were kind of visualizing. And I was like, you know, these kids are actually really interested in these things like games. You know, we teach them about streaming and development and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I would say after a year of doing it, like more needs to happen. Like this next project, basically I want to kind of bring this energy into Llanelli Town Centre. And what you say about educating, that's going to be a big part. You know, I want to run workshops on 3D animation and business and all that kind of stuff. And that point you made just now about being creative but not essentially hitting it on the business side, that's kind of the problem I want to fix, because you know, these things are solved with people, right, with different skills. You know, it's like starting a new business. If we were to like launch a new concept store in town, you know, bringing fashion designers from local areas and shoes, whatever, or maybe even a current founder who's got like a brilliant product but doesn't necessarily know how to market themselves, or their brand is off, you know what I mean? So yeah, I want to start an incubator to try and fill those holes as a sense. Yeah, right, I'll stop talking now.
Wow, it's really, really inspiring. And I think that's it, isn't it? Like unlocking that potential in young people and kids from all different backgrounds that are, you know, really interested in this stuff. And yeah, hearing those stories of how you kind of found the talents in those kids is really very inspiring. And then linking that to placemaking in places like Llanelli, you know, as For the Region, we do a lot of kind of community engagement work around local places and what they really need. I think the creative industries has such a great potential to breathe life back into some of these places that have really struggled over the last decades. We certainly want to see that happening in Swansea city centre. The creative industries have a real role to play, but in places like Llanelli and yeah, going to where people are who have so much potential and talent, if only it can be, you know, unleashed in these sectors. So yeah, let's keep talking about that, James. That sounds really, really exciting. Yeah, on the 3D side, you know, at iCreate, we're getting into, you know, the metaverse, and somebody mentioned Web3 earlier on, and it's just this massive, massive new opportunity and sector for all of this stuff. So it's such a great sector for young people to get interested in.
Definitely.
Dan, let's hear from you. What were you going to say?
Oh yeah, I mean, just regarding really the creative hubs and people working together. I mean, I don't know if you're all familiar with what we do in Swansea, but we've got 100 studios basically that we rent out over 4 buildings in Swansea. We started off specialising in the messy arts, painting, people throwing stuff around, getting dirty, and generally it was that. But over the last couple of years, I mean, we've got someone there with a TV studio and a green screen. We've got a photography studio set up. We've got 2 film editors and filmmakers renting studios off us. So we've slowly started to move into that really, and people using those as cheap office spaces. And rather than the hot desking idea and just coming in, they obviously can set up, got a locked door, so they can set a business up and leave kit in there. It's just really something that Helen said about the blog and the space. I mean, if that, and about the hub, about her saying I'm a creative hub to create content or blog material or podcasts. We have had a few people approach us about that. So we were thinking maybe of moving more into like kind of business really, and having a studio dedicated to that. So would be if anybody is interested in that really, what would it entail? What would we need in there? You know, I mean, Helen, if you've got ideas, we don't have any expertise on that. Our expertise is getting the space and hiring it. But we do have, or we will have space available. We are hopefully moving in, fingers crossed. We put an application in to regenerate the JT Morgan building in Swansea. So that will have a bio-solar roof, so it will be solar panelled in there. And then obviously it'll have studios then on 3 floors. It's 44,000 square foot altogether. And one of the things we're offering is specially made or dedicated spaces. So that would be a great idea for us too. And it would be, we'd have a 30-year lease then. It would be more a permanent home. So we've got a couple of years left on the leases we've got in the studios. But eventually it would be great to move it in there into one centralized hub then, which will have a coffee shop, gallery, and then obviously all the workspaces and the creative hub, whatever, you know. So basically it's just a call out for anyone that would be interested in that. What you need, what do we need? Do we need kit? Do you need space, sound, stuff to stop noise getting in? What do you call it? Yeah, that stuff, padding. I don't know what it is. You can see my expertise here. I'm an analog photographer by trade, so this is all way out of my league. But yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, so it's just a call out. We do have that creative industry and that creative hub in Swansea already. So if anyone wants to join and is interested, then I'm sure we can start the conversation for everyone.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, loads to explore and great opportunities there. And like we were saying, you know, Eregin is a fantastic hub and co-location of businesses. Elysium, really fantastic resource for creatives in Swansea, and lots more potential, it sounds like, coming on stream soon. So that's really exciting. I don't know what already exists in Llanelli, but perhaps there's something coming soon. And be great to see these kinds of community engagement and open doors for creative people to start businesses and develop their own creative practice. You know, it is a really fast changing sector, and I don't know whether any of you are following what's happening with artificial intelligence in the creative industries at the moment. And I've been playing around with this thing called the Mid Journey it's a sort of Discord bot that is creating amazing artwork using artificial intelligence. But it's just one example of how the game is changing all the time. We need to keep talking, we need to keep adapting, and there's no shortage of opportunities for people in the creative industries, but those opportunities are changing and shifting all the time. We've talked about the massive demand there is for video content. We've talked about it in relation to businesses, but we can also look at, you know, big streaming platforms that are creating huge amounts of creative content and not looking to stop doing that anytime soon. And yeah, massive opportunity that we just need to amplify, make sure we're opening the door to that to all sorts of people, because there are great careers to be had. And hopefully, as somebody said earlier, it's a resilient sector. So when times are tough, hopefully we can still find our way and play our role and keep going from strength to strength as creative people, businesses, and hopefully a creative region. I found it really fascinating discussion. I'm sure my colleague Evie has taken loads of notes. She's really great at capturing all of this. So we'll be able to pull all this together into something of a report and a bit of a refresh on what our priorities and opportunity areas could be going forward. I also want to flag up that For the Region is starting to convene a conversation about inspiring and empowering young people across the region. So all of this is really interconnected with that, but we've got a conversation upcoming and potentially building towards some kind of large youth engagement, I don't know, events or series of events or something on a regional basis, engaging with young people as the future of our region. So there may be people here today that would be interested in being part of that, and Evie has shared a link in the chat to that initial meeting to co-create something on that. And just to reiterate that thing about Creative Wales and us needing to get them to spend some more of their money in our region, we'd really welcome anyone with project ideas that they want to drive forward. If For the Region can help in any way with that, then we would be delighted. And we're a membership organisation, so really, really keen to enable collaboration and co-production on all of these things across the 4 counties of South West Wales. Hopefully you agree that today has been a really exciting, optimistic and inspiring discussion with loads of important themes coming out. And thank you to our 4 speakers, all of whom were women, in case you didn't notice, which has been really nice to have a really positive gender balance in the discussions this afternoon. Thank you to all 4 of you for sharing your perspectives from your different corners of the creative sector in South West Wales, and to all of you who have contributed your insights to this afternoon's discussion. Creative and digital is just one of 6 impact areas that For the Region hosts these sorts of discussions about. Everything is so connected. We haven't even really got on to talking enough about the climate emergency and all the other big challenges of our time. But all of these things are so interconnected, and we host these member discussion forums and sector forums on a regular basis. So keep in touch with what we're up to, and please do invite us to be part of anything you're doing and share things with us for us to share with our network. I think Rachel and Jenny did share an invitation in the chat earlier for anyone that's interested in being part of the Gower College Employer Board for the creative industries. Board makes it sound really sort of maybe official and unwelcoming, I suppose, but it's not that at all. It's very much a sort of a free and relaxed sort of environment, and we, as I say, we're all working towards trying to get and inspire more people into the creative industry, and we want to make sure that all areas are covered, all the different disciplines within the creative sector are covered as well. So if anybody has the time to sort of join us at our next meeting, we would be eternally grateful. Thank you. Brilliant. Yes, great. And we'll share the links that have been shared in the chat. We'll share the event report. So we've captured all of that, and we'll keep in touch with you all, but please do the same. Thank you very, very much for spending a couple of hours with us this afternoon. It's been really, really exciting and inspiring, and we'll look forward to catching up with you again soon. Bye for now.